I'm from Syria, and for 7 years I worked with Arabic publishers. I've illustrated and I've written stories in Arabic in Lebanon and Jordan and in Saudi Arabia. Over the years, I was lucky that I got published with various Arab countries. And then after the first year of war in Syria, I moved here to London. And to be honest, I didn't have a plan to write in English. In the beginning, I found myself in an opportunity where I can write a story in English. And I did it, and it got published by my wonderful publisher, Lantana. And this is how I started my journey with my first book in English. This one is The Jasmine's Knees. So here where my journey started in English. And for the past now 7 years as well, I've been writing and illustrating stories for mostly British publishers, but my latest book was for a New York-based publisher. They're Bloomsbury, so they are in New York, and now I'm working as well with the US. Now, when I was in Syria, living the first year of war, I did my book Ghadan, tomorrow. And this book, I didn't have in mind that it might be published or not. I just did it to process the war, to explore my feelings and how we feel. And I published it myself. So I co-founded with my family a Box of Tales publishing house because I couldn't find other ways to get it out there. And we published it. And when I moved here to the UK, I was lucky that my publisher from Lantana said, we need to have it in English, and it's now is in English. So that's the book in English. It's we will talk about it and we'll explore some of the illustrations later, but I'm lucky that now the book is also available in English as well. Now, I have here with me like a lot of books that I will be talking about, and I will be sharing. So I will be reading some chapters of them, and I will be sharing what do I think about the books. But the first question that comes in mind, and I talked about it in the London Book Fair before the lockdown started, I was invited to London Book Fair, and a lot of people were asking me, what does it feel like to experience these two industries in the Arab world and here in the UK, and what are the differences, what are the common points? And for me, when I compare, we should not compare not looking at the context, of course, because the amount of funding and support that English publishers have here in the UK to support children's literature, to encourage reading, to get children excited about books is massive. Libraries are available everywhere. You can borrow any book you want. You can borrow it electronically. There are events of story reading from writers every day here happening, where I know that in the Arab world, it's not always the case, and not every country have the ability to have such established industry. So when we compare, because I will be complaining about both, you will hear me complaining about what's problem in the Arabic industry and what's problem in the English children's literature industry. But we have to always bear in mind, if we complain about what's going on in the Arab world, we should not compare properly and without remembering that not the same amount of funding, we don't have as much libraries, we don't have as much programs that are designed to encourage literacy through reading. So always let's bear that in mind. We need systemic support for the Arab publishers in order for them to improve. And if this systemic support is not, I mean, there are amazing funds, of course, I should never generalize, but we need more, and we need more like proper plans to see better publishing. So the first thing that I would say about the differences between the two is, and that's the Arab publishers win in here, that a lot of Arab publishers are independent. So they're not big, massive companies that they just want to sell in supermarket. a lot of them are a family or a mom who likes to read for her children, and she decides to write stories and then she published them. And that's beautiful, because what's happened, it gives space for these books to be experimental. It gives space for these books to be well thought of. It gives this mom who's publishing books in a very small market for it, give the chance to bring more illustrators, more writers, where sometimes here in the UK with the big, massive publishers, it's very mainstream in a way that they just want them in the supermarket, and want them in the supermarket, it means that they had to tick certain boxes. And that's, for me, sometimes is a shame, because it loses some of the quality of this. But overall, we're talking about in the UK an industry that is ancient, that is very old, and it has been improving throughout the years. So what is happening here, it's not only improving in the literacy, but now improving of choosing the book. So there are so many campaigns of what to choose, diversity, why diversity matter, and all of these important topics that we see it's happening in the UK, that I'm hoping to see more and more of in the Arab world. Now, the second thing is, I would say, and this will lead me into a very important topic, is the reading age. So basically, when I published Ghadan, so this is Ghadan, and I'm just going to read for you a couple of pages of it, so just you can have an idea what I'm talking about. So this is a picture book, okay? So this is not a chapter book. I think we're all aware of the difference between picture books and chapter books, right? The picture book is a book that is based on illustrations and there is more text, where the chapter books is only the books that are only words. There are no illustrations inside. So this is Ghadan. And if I want to read the text, لم يعد يزن يذهب إلى الحديقة ولم يعد يرى حمزة ابن الجيران كل شيء يتغير حوله. Okay, so that's one spread of the book. The book is translated into English, okay? So if you can think the same words, nothing changed, just translated. When I published it in the Arab world, the category of it was, the age group was for 9 to 12 years old. And if you look at the Arab publishing, you would find picture books for 9 to 12, you would find picture books for 12 plus as well. We're here in the UK, this book is for 5 plus. Picture book will never go for children that are 10 years old and 11 years old. Because what's happening here at this age, they all read chapter books. They all read 50,000 words for a book. So their curriculum, when the teacher recommends a book that you have to read this book and we're gonna talk about it in 2 weeks or next week or whatever, they don't give them picture books when they are 9 and 10, they only give them chapter books. And what does that tell us? This massive difference, right? We're talking about 4 years, between 5 to 9, we're talking about 5 years difference. It can only tell us that reading ability in Arabic and in the Arab world, unfortunately, is not as strong as here. I remember, because I've written and illustrated so many books and they've always been 9 plus and it's normal. And then when I came to the UK and I told my publisher, she was surprised. She was 9, 10, 11 picture books. Won't sell because this is a very simple text. So no, this is for younger children. It's for 5-year-old, 5 to 10. And I found it such a sad reality to know that our children reading ability is less, not as strong as kids here in the UK. But please keep bearing in mind when I'm complaining a little bit, when I talked about the funding and the support and the system. So I don't want to criticize without reminding ourselves that, of course, here the libraries, and so we should not forget that. But that for me is such a sad reality. And I don't remember so I lived in Syria all my life, and I don't remember when I was in Syria, I saw a 9-year-old child with a chapter books or a child who's reading a big novel. It was very rarely. Here in the UK, yes, children of 9 years old and 10 years old, they play in the park, but then when they sit in the corner underneath the tree, you find this novel of 50,000K, 55,000K reading it as their part of their curriculum. And it's easy to criticize, but what's not easy is to ask ourselves why and try to find ways to improve this. So if we ask ourselves why our children don't read as much, because as you know, what is it, the latest statistics, please excuse me, I don't remember the latest statistics, but I remember that I've read it a year ago, and it was like children in the Arab world only read for pleasure for about an hour a year. And all the rest of the readings is for the school, so they don't really read for pleasure. So let's ask ourselves why and how we can change that together. What are from my experience as writer, illustrator, and from my experience as a mom, having a toddler, what's my recommendation to change this? So the first thing is, my main point is that I want to really insist on is the fact of the importance of reading for pleasure. So reading for pleasure, it's the one thing that here in the UK, they are funding, they are supporting, they are encouraging. Every day I hear, if I get a pound every time I hear the word reading for pleasure here in the UK, I'll be rich now, because that's their main obsession, and rightly so. So they don't recommend books to learn. They don't recommend books to explore a new topic. They recommend books for pure pleasure. They want children to learn that I'm reading for pleasure because I love reading, because I enjoy it. I don't think I was asked to read any book for pleasure when I was in school back home. I don't remember that. And if I was recommended to read a book, it was very, very boring. And I'm just gonna read for you why reading for pleasure is important. Just few points by the Book Trust. So if I wanna read just few points, why reading for pleasure is important. Reading for pleasure has many non-literacy benefits and can increase empathy, improve relationships with others, reduce the symptoms of depression, and improve well-being throughout life. So that's just one of, later we're gonna send you everything in a resource. So this link, I will add it if you just wanna have a look why reading for pleasure is important. But that's one of the points. Another point, why reading for pleasure is important. There is a strong association between the amount of reading for pleasure students say they do and their reading achievements. Students who read for pleasure, again, not read to study, make significantly more progress in vocabulary, spelling, and math. Math, can you believe it? I had no idea that even make them better in math than children who read little. So I think one thing we can learn is we want children to enjoy reading, right? So that's, and when I send you the form, please read all these points because it's amazing. It's mind-blowing. I didn't know that it's better for depression and well-being. I didn't know these amazing information. So please read them all. So do we do enough to encourage children to read for pleasure? And what can we do to make them read more? One of the problem I find and why our children don't read enough for pleasure is, one of them, for example, a simple point is we have the problem, not the problem, but we have the reality. I don't want to call it a problem at all. It's not a problem, it's beautiful. But the reality that our spoken Arabic, which is the Ammiya, is very, very different than our Fusha, right? So it makes it a bit harder for a child to read for pleasure when he's not using that language every day. So I'll start from my toddler, because this is when it starts. Reading for pleasure, if it really has to start from very, very early ages. When I read them the book in Fusha, he is not interested because he's a 3-year-old. He's not gonna understand those Fusha sentences. I don't talk to him in Fusha. Now, I don't suggest that the solution, let's publish books in Ammiya. Of course, that's not the solution. I'm not saying let's only talk in Ammiya. And that's one of the debates we had with Ahlan Simsim and when they were doing amazing educational program for children refugees. What's the solution for that? And for me, is what I do with my toddler is I really try to mix, and I'm not too scared of mixing. And I remember Arabic publishers were really, really scared of mixing. So I remember I couldn't use the word jiddo because it's a jad. Well, one word, maybe when I talk to him, I try to make it a bit easier. For example, when I wrote my book, Ansimi Layla in Arabic, the title is Layla Ruddi Alayya. So I didn't say Layla Ujibini. Why the title of the book Layla Ruddi Alayya and not Layla Ajibini? Because in Ammiya we say Layla Ruddi Alay. So it's easier for my toddler to relate because it's still Fusha. I'm not using Ammiya words here, but it's easier for him to relate. So maybe we have to also bear these in mind. Another problem I found it, it's really, I found it a major problem is, and I have a lot of books here next to me, is a lot of our children's books, the characters don't have agency. So if so I have, like, let's start here. I'm going to read part of this book. I don't want to attack anyone, so I'm not going to mention the name of the title of the book or anything, but let's read this sentence. Let's read this sentence in an Arabic published book, okay? So this is a book for preschooler, apparently, so the age is for very young kids. حين أكون جميلة من الداخل أستطيع أن أرى الجمال حولي في الخارج أيضا. So why would my toddler be interested in this? Is that reading for pleasure? And how direct that is. Maybe we should not tell the child how he sees things. Maybe we should show him. So I do workshops for children about writing stories. And the first rule I tell them, don't tell me, show me. So don't tell me this boy was sad, maybe saying he was sitting and he stopped looking at the view from the car and his eyes were directed toward another place. And then we know that the child is sad. Let's read, if I read for you, for example, how many words here in these books, in Arabic books, saying ما أسعدني سأكبر وأصبح قوية اقتنعت بفكرة ماما. All of these, as if our children don't have opinion, and always our mother tell us to do something and we are convinced. That is not fun. And that's not gonna create reading for pleasure, I guarantee you. Another one, let's read part of this book. It's about a little boy who's afraid of the dark, right? The classic. And then he's scared, and then his mom and come and tell him, نم يا صغيري فالليل طويل وسافر بعيدا في حقل جميل. And then what happened? نيار أحب الظلام المخيفة وأخيرا ووجد فيها لعبة ظريفة. So maybe the character, we should not, you tell us how would the character feel, and maybe we should see him playing with the shadows, and maybe it's not the mom who told us, maybe he had to experience something happening. So all of these stories that are so direct and so educational, I don't find it gonna create reading for pleasure. So that's one of the points that I have to say. There are amazing books in Arabic, amazing. There are amazing writers. I can mention few, or I can send them in a form. For me, I love what is going on in the Arab world, but there are also these books that I'm talking about that are too educational and then they're too direct. So just my main point is, let's pick these books in a way that kids will enjoy, that it's not about what mom is telling me and what mom is not telling me. So now I'm gonna start sharing my screen, and I'm gonna
Nadine, just wanted to say you're getting some really great comments in the chat. Some people are just agreeing with you, talking about how, just wanted to read a few because I know you've been presenting about how a lot of writers and publishers in the Arab world have books that don't have as many pictures, they're too wordy. Someone commented how using simple language and choosing the language of picture stories is age appropriate and language appropriate is important, that a lot of books are too complicated. Fostering children's agency is a good starting point. So you've had some discussion going, just wanted to share that with you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm just going to read one of the comments. Reading isn't a priority or a daily habit for Arabs. So true. And that makes me really sad. I don't think my toddler can go to bed without a story. We would have tears. We would have screaming. So I'm surprised when I hear that there are kids goes to sleep without a bedtime story. And to further comment on Layali, right? To further comment on this, I'll give you a very important example. I find it, I love now, of course, because of the pandemic, everything is on Zoom, but I love going to read my stories in festivals or in story reading events here in the UK. And I find it very hard in the Arab world. And why I find it very hard, I tell you why. So I've been doing festivals, I've been touring the UK. I've been really lucky that I get the chance to explore story reading sessions here. And when I arrive, I would find all the parents sitting on the mat, on the floor with the children on their lap, all listening to the stories, all interacting together, all raising their hand, and then all drawing with the children. So when I do it for Arab parents, unfortunately, the parents are on their phone, sitting in the corner, and the kids are in the middle by themselves. If kids mirror us, it's not hard to teach child something because they mirror their parents. They do what their parents do. If your mom and dad look uninterested in the session, do you think the child's going to be interested in the session? So that's always, I find it so difficult. And they are talking to each other, and I'm like, am I supposed to read the story when you are talking and you don't look interested? So I always go do a lot of breathing exercises when I read my stories. Not everyone, of course, I should never generalize, but a lot of the time I find parents are interested. So of course your children are going to be interested, and then the children are not interested and they're running around, and it's obviously that they don't have that habit, they don't have that culture, they're not used to sitting and listening to a story. Should we read another comment and then move to the educational resources?
I think people were generally kind of agreeing with things you were saying. So I think it's great to move on to the educational resources now and talk about how we can connect all of these amazing points to what teachers are doing in their classrooms. So I think it's a great transition point.
Okay, I'm really glad that things are going well, and let's have a look of what I'm going to start sharing my screen, and let's have a look of what's happening here in the UK in terms of educational resources. So can you see my screen or not yet? Oh, no, not yet. Sorry. Okay. Can you see it now? Yeah. Okay. Thank you, George. Okay. So I'm going to start by talking about author visits and what do we do in author visits here in the UK. And then I'm going to show you one educational resources. These educational resources are free to be downloaded, but I will also send it all for you to download in a PDF file that you will receive later on. So to be honest, when I was preparing this presentation, I felt a bit emotional because that was my life before COVID. And I don't know if that will come back or when. I mean, hopefully now with the vaccine it will come back, but I don't know when now because everything is on Zoom. So can I please see in the comment, I can't see the comments anymore, but is there a culture of author visits in the Arab world? That's something I have no idea. I wonder if, can anyone tell me? I can't read the comments anymore, so I shouldn't be asking too many questions. So I'm not sure if
we can read the comments for you. So the question is there a culture of author visits in the Arab world? Does anyone have any thoughts or insight into that they'd like to either, you can unmute or you can share in the chat?
Speaking from experience as a student.
Or maybe in not necessarily in Arab world, but when teaching a language, is author visit part of it? Is the culture
in the US? So in the US as well is the question. Oh. Okay, so in the US, have you had author visits in your classrooms while teaching Arabic? And I think we're getting some answers here from is in the Arab world. We've had someone said, I think authors are appearing mostly at book festivals in the Arab world. And many people here who grew up in the Arab world said they never had one as a student. Layla shared in the US, definitely, yes, we've had author visits in our classrooms, library events for parents and children. So we have a teacher from Mauritius who said in Mauritius we have for English and French, but not Arabic.
Okay, so yeah, so that's also conclude my point is it's I would love to see author visit as part of teaching Arabic. I would love, maybe together we can do something and improve that culture, because I literally can't recommend it highly enough. And we're going to see in the resources now why is this important. But what author visits are is schools, all schools, state, private, schools that are very highly funded and schools that have very little funding. They do author visit. They invite author to talk about their books, and they have budget for it, so we are paid for it. And a lot of our income actually comes from author visits. So publishing doesn't make a lot of money, as you all know. Literature don't make money, but a lot of our income comes from school inviting us. It's part of their curriculum. So here it's the norm. And what I love about author visit is I don't come and read my book, because the children have already read it and I've already explored it for 2 weeks before I arrive. And that's what's so beautiful. I only arrive to tell them how I wrote it, why I wrote it, to answer their question, to interact with them. But what's happening here is they explored it to the max, to the full extent. And we're going to see now how they explored it. And then I come, and my job is very easy and simple. So it's really the hard job on the teachers. So let's have a look on, I'm gonna stop sharing this and I'm gonna share with you one of the resources, okay? So let's share tomorrow. So that's one of the educational resource. George, can you see the, okay, perfect. View enter full screen. Okay, so that's one of the educational resources that it's created. So every book is published, not every book, but a lot of the publishers, when they publish a book, they make teachers' life easier by creating this guiding reading resource, which they use in the class to use that book to teach a language and to encourage literacy and to encourage reading for pleasure. So if we quickly want to explore it, let's have a look. So let's say they start by reading the cover. What do you think tomorrow is about? Has your prediction changed? Who is the author? Who is the illustrator? And the title of the book is Tomorrow. What do you predict the story might be about? Create a mind map of words, pictures, and phrases linked to change. Isn't that beautiful exercise if you think about it? So tomorrow, immediately we think that a change, it means it's about change. So let's together create pictures and phrases linked to phrase. So here we haven't even started reading the book. And that's what I love about it. They work on it for weeks and weeks before the author comes, and they create these beautiful exercises just from a simple story that is a picture book. Let's move on. One of my favorites is what they do is they read the image a lot before reading the words. And for example, here, I'm going to show you the first page. Here's the first page of the book. And before looking at these, spend more time exploring the end paper. Now, I'm just going to move on here. What do you notice about Yazan's position in the page? Why might this be? Considers Yazan's feeling. What might be thinking and feeling? Does the room look inviting? What do you think Yazan is? So it's so beautiful that even some of those questions I can't even answer. And if we move more and explore these resources more, what they do is they ask you to explore artists who did similar job. So because here we're reading the body language of Yazan, they mention names of artists that they focus on body language, and they look at their paintings, and they ask the children to read the body image of these paintings. So what we're doing is not only learning language, we're learning art, we're learning culture. So there is really, really beautiful approach to the entire thing. Now, in this educational resource, I found they use international artists. I would have loved if they only used Syrian or Arab, because the writer is Syrian and Arab, but in one of their exercises, let's have a look here, they used a Syrian artist. So suggested activities: spend some time exploring the work of the Syrian artist Tammam Azzam, who superimposes famous pieces of artwork into bombing building in Syria. How do they make you feel? Can you create your own piece of artwork in a similar style? So some of them are purely based on painting, on art and craft, but doesn't that what create reading for pleasure? Now, what they do as well is they link it to poems. So spend some time exploring Lament for Syria by Amine Abu Kreish. What do you like about the poem? What do you dislike? Because it's a poem, explore as well the war in Syria. So it's so linked. I'm going to show you another educational resource that I really love the activities for it as well. This one. So this one is for my book, The Jasmine Sneeze. Where is it? Not sure if you can share it and if you can see it or not yet. You can see it.
Part of it.
Sorry. No, that's tomorrow. That's when you have so many screens open. Yeah. No, not this one, sorry. There. Yeah, I found it, okay. Okay. So let's explore it quickly because I'm running out of time and I really want question and answer. But one of my favorite here exercises, so a lot of them are grammar, heavily grammar based. So as you can see here, prediction, I want to explore something that is grammar based to see that you can even, yeah, here, if you can see here, a lot of them are heavily grammar based. So choose coordinating conjunction to fill in the gaps below, and they put, as you can see, gaps in the sentences. So they're teaching them grammar, vocabulary. At the bottom of the guided reading resource, the list, I can't read, one second, a list of challenge words that students might find more difficult to understand. Students can arrange these alphabetical order, look at them in the dictionary, record their findings, and then research for synonyms. So isn't that beautiful? What they do is, let's pick the difficult words together from the book. So it's really full in terms of art, culture, the resources, and grammar, and learning new vocabs. My favorite exercise, let's have a look at it. Where is it? Yeah, here, I really love it. So if you can see on the left side, we have grammar, literacy, composition, comprehension, and all of that points of what teachers can do. So really, really the publishers is making life a bit easier. It's not like the teacher is sitting doing these exercises for hours, but what we can do now is just learn from them and maybe translate them. One of my favorite thing in this resource is make a film of a journalist interviewing the cat of the story, and the other character for the Damascus news. So they want kids to take cameras and go video an interview and then come back to the school with this video and interview. So those like really fun activities. For example, search for and watch news reports about the conflict in Syria on CBBC's Newsground website, summarize an article or a video that interests you. So again, all of that related to the topic of Syria. I'm gonna stop sharing now because I know that I'm running out of time, and there are a few things that I just want to mention before we start the question and answer. All good, George? Okay, so what I did is I thought that you might be very interested in downloading these resources, but I added some of my tips on them. So if they're using a lot of British artists, but I want us to replace them to Arab artists. So I'm giving very few suggestions. So if you want to read about the expression of face, we got Asma Fayoumi, a Syrian artist who beautifully represents her paintings, a lot of expression in her paintings. So that's something it's worth exploring with the children. Dia Batal is an amazing Palestinian artist, and she uses Mahmoud Darwish's poems to create metal. So I can't find a better artist to help us teach Arabic than this artist. She also does alphabet, so we can always look at her art and also link it to the books and explore it and teach and use it to teach Arabic really. Safwan Dahoul, we talked about body language. So in the book, in every image in my book, and tomorrow they read the body language of the character Yazan. And if we want to explore body language, Safwan Dahoul is an artist who you can read a lot in his images just by reading the body language of the character in his images. Now, one thing I would like to recommend is what's happening here is there are a lot of weeks, celebration weeks, that makes students even more interested in reading, and they celebrate it. So we have, for example, Refugee Weeks, we have Empathy Lab, we have Mother Tongue Week, Word Book Day. So in these weeks, they celebrate for an entire week refugee. So the refugees, so maybe I got a lot invited during Refugee Weeks, which is in mid-June, because they want to talk about refugees. So they think bringing a Syrian author on Refugee Weeks is a good idea, so I can talk about and read my books and everything. We have Math Weeks. Even in Math Weeks, they invite authors. So Math Weeks isn't only heavily linked to math. Math Weeks, they bring authors that they wrote about science, that they wrote about science fictions, and they celebrate it as well. Empathy Lab is they celebrate books that focus on empathy and creating empathy for others. So if we join these celebrations and these hashtags, I think it will be really beautiful, because we will be part of a wider community, even that they're happening in English and we're teaching them in Arabic, but we would join the fun, and I would really guarantee that students will have fun exploring one topic for an entire week and learn about it in Arabic. We're running out of time. I wanted to show you what I do in my presentation when I come to meet these kids. I always over prepare, and then now it's almost 5. But I'm going to show you quickly. When I go to the school visit, I talk about my inspiration from Damascus. I show my illustrations. You can see I talk about how I love the architecture in Syria and how the architecture influenced my illustration. So I really don't read the story, because the story is already read and understood better than me. So they don't need me to come read it for them. I read it just for fun, but it's not the main point is come read the story for us. So I talk about my my work, where I bring my inspiration. For example, here I show them how I create a picture book. I show them examples of how I do my watercolor paintings. So that's what an author do. So I thought it's very important also to show what's an author do when they arrive. If the story is read, really, they don't read the author to come and read the story. Is for simply exploring the process of writing, process of illustrating, and for kids to look up to that person and to get encouraged that, oh, I read the book and I'm meeting the person who wrote it. So all of that to, again, reading for pleasure. So on time, 4:50, hopefully enough time for question and answer. I have here my website and Twitter and Instagram and Facebook if you're happy to stay in touch with me. And everything I mentioned about links, they will be sent to you hopefully by Monday. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Nadine, for this informative session and these great examples of activities that we could all learn from and incorporate in our classes. And before we open it up for questions, I think speaking of reading for pleasure, I think we as teachers, we can do that in our classroom. You know, it is great sometimes to have take a book and do activities around it and questions, but it doesn't always need to be about that. I think sometimes if we could create as an exit ticket for our lesson or as a mind break in the lesson to just sit and read, you know, a page or two of a story. So this is in some ways we are telling kids or sending the message that reading is for us to be able to meditate, to escape a situation, to enjoy each other and to learn about others and not just about it's part of the curriculum and the class. So of course it is very important to be, but this is also kind of a thought that came to mind now.
I completely agree. And again, what brings us back that children who reads more, they have a better connection with their emotion and their well-being and mental health. I mean, it is meditation. It is some kind of meditation.
With that, we want to make sure that we give some time for questions. I see Suad has a question. Suad, feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, thank you so much, Nadine, for your presentation. That was a great insightful and reminders of our duties as parents and as educators. But I would add that also the main or the most responsible person in the book not being introduced to the kid is the degradation of the educational system in the Arab world. I come from Morocco, and I remember as a kid, 7 years old, first grade, we had access to library of the school. And we had already at that age access to the chapter books, not the picture books, at the age of 7 and 8. So that was back in the 70s. I see that this has disappeared from our landscape as in the Arab world. The book disappeared completely. And I think that we owe some of this, we owe some of why the book was still introduced in the 70s I'm losing my words this morning, to le protectorat qui était, while I'm switching to French, to the, what's the protectorat in English? Or the الاستعمار. So الاستعمار at that time, he left a lot of their educational system. So they introduced to us the book. It was there, and we went through their path. And then all of a sudden, the Arabs took over the education, and it was the mess. So I make our leaders responsible mostly of the degradation of the book in the child's life. And it disappeared completely. And I'm so sad for what happened to the reading to our children at an early age. And furthermore, I mean, as teenagers, they don't know the book. As kids, they don't know the book. It's really a problem. And we hope that we can do something about this as educators.
Can I Can I quickly comment? I can't agree more with you that how it's not as good as before. And even I know I hear from my mom that libraries were more accessible, but there is a problem with the ex-colonialist books that they were left for us, because what happened is, although we can learn a lot from their educational way, but what happened is they bring only their stories. They bring only characters that are European and with their white skin and blue eyes. And what does that create to our children? It creates inferiority complex, because children need to see local aesthetic. They need to see themselves in the stories they read. Otherwise, they would think they're not worthy enough. And I am one of them. When I was a child, I only read English and French books. And when I wanted to play the princess, I would change my name to a Western name, because I didn't think we are worthy enough of being princesses, because I didn't have stories that comes from our local aesthetics. So what's important for us is to really learn, of course, from their educational system, because I so agree with you. I blame a lot what's happening to the Arab world, to us, to Arab leaders and to Arab educational systems. I blame them. It should be better. But yet in the same time, we should also bear in mind that we need to change a lot of the things they left. I quickly, because I want to leave room for more questions. And I went to Sweden, and I was talking in the Gothenburg Book Fair, and I talked about something called the Maktaba al-Khadra, or the Green Library, and these are translated fairy tales from Swedish to Arabic, and they were distributed everywhere. And I told them it was a lot of money spent by the Swedish government to Syria for us to read your fairy tale. I wish that money was created to train writers to write about their own culture and to publish. And because I remember what that too to me. Kids should read about the world, of course, and kids should read about everything. But if they only read about Europe and they only read about fairy tales, that really can create identity problems. So it's very important point that you mentioned, Suad, and I really thank you for it.
We have a question from Rafa Sa. So Rafa, if you please unmute yourself. Rafa, we can't.
Oh, Rafa, you have to push unmute. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, so hello everyone, and thank you so much NYATC for organizing this special event. And thank you, Nadine, for the great insights. So I just wanted to quickly introduce myself. I'm new to the group and I'm glad I found you. We are a new service in the US called Arabic Kids. It's arabickids.com. And we send curated Arabic children books to families each month in boxes to help them get excited about the Arabic language and culture. And one of the books was Nadine's, great book, Tomorrow in Arabic. So I just wanted to let you know that, we are there, we exist. If we've been trying to find ways to connect to teachers. If there's any way we can support you and support your classroom, I will share our website and my email address with you all. And please just contact us anytime. And we just love to start a conversation. Again, thank you so much.
Rafa,
thank you so much.
For you in the chat, if you would like to respond to.
Yes, I will just take a look now.
Yeah, someone asked, what do you mean by curated?
So, how Nadine talked about all the not so interesting Arabic books, the ones that are just complicated and that got us very, like for us living in the US, we're used to the, American standard of, great books to reading to our kids. So we can't read those, too complicated. So curated means the ones that are good to read, the quality Arabic children books. And Nadine mentioned that there are publishers and writers and illustrators doing really amazing things these days. And so that's the kind of books that we spend a lot of time, researching and bringing it to our service in the US.
I'm a big fan of Rafa, her subscription box. So I'm happy that you joined us. And one of the problem is accessibility. So what you're doing is amazing job, because a lot of kids who live in Arab countries don't speak Arabic because they don't have accessibilities to books. So it's wonderful. It's absolutely amazing what you're doing. So
Thank you, Nadine. Yeah, we hope to do more. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And I put in the chat contact@arabkids.com. If you have future questions for Rafa, please reach out to her. We have time for just one more question. If anyone has a question, either put it in the chat or raise your hand, please. And also, I've put today's survey in the chat. Please do take the 3 to 5 minutes to fill that out. It is so important. You all know that we are able to put on these webinars due to the amazing generous funding of our sponsor, Qatar Foundation International. And it's really important that we get your feedback on these events to be able to continue offering this programming. So please do take the few moments to fill out that survey before you leave today. But with that, we still do want to take time for one more question if there is one.
Rafa, what's the title the website that you talked about?
Oops, I'm just going to share it now. It's at arabickids.com.
Thank you.
Sure.
And Layali asked, are there trainings for potential authors? Layali, do you mean like educators who want to become authors, or students who are interested in learning more about becoming authors? Can you come on and just explain your question a little bit more?
Yeah, I think I think there's the Arabi, it's called Arabi 21, which has like standards for like how to grade books based on reading level in Arabic. I wonder if there are also like, you know, any workshops or resources for people interested in publishing books based on reading levels, graded reading, you know, materials and stuff like that. If that might not be for our speaker today, that might be in general, like maybe for you guys at the council or other, you know, people who know. I think I saw Lina Khulaqi on here. She has published books. I don't know if there are any resources available for like how to, you know, like basically cater to your audience and not just, you know, put everything on your mind on a transcript, basically.
I turn it to Lina Khulaqi. Thank you, Layali. This is very important, and thank you for sharing. I think you gave us now an idea of a webinar or a session that we could host, is how to, and maybe we can collaborate with all these authors, you know, on creating a webinar on how to write, or like, you know, kind of like step by step, if you want to explore this field and you have a passion for that and you want to grow it and you don't know where to start. So I think this is a great opportunity, and definitely Liz and I, we will be thinking about something to offer through NYATC. Lina? I see Lina Khulaqi.
Yes, yes. Marhaba. Thank you so much, Nadine, for all this information. Unfortunately, I've never had an opportunity to read any of your published books, and I'm really interested now to look at them. I'm answering the question of having really like kind of graded reading level, especially in US and maybe in UK. This is a dilemma for our Arabic readers, Arabic learners who wants to read. However, their level of reading is different than the readers in Arab world. So Arabic Reader Program, it's through Al-Din Foundation. We have this program for past 3 years. And what we do is really, we look into all the books we classified according to ACFL standards around 2,000 to 2,000, 3,000 books. We were unfortunately were able to take into the consideration in this program around 800 out of all of this, due to the fact of the illustration is not really clear, especially when it comes to picture books. So, I mean, just to answer, there is a program that has these books, and the books also, it's aligned with actual standards, and it's based on reading comprehension, whereas students will read the book on their own, imitating, I don't know, I know everyone knows accelerated readers. So it's according to their reading level. They will go through placement tests to determine their reading level, and it's differentiated. It helps a lot of our teachers and schools who are using this um, program. Nadine, I would love to connect with you and see if we can adapt your books in this program and be part of our graded reading aligned with Act 4. Thinking of Arabic 21, it is standards actually created for Arabic speakers in the Arab world, which does not really fit in US, where our learners, they have different language proficiency language, because we meet with them once a day. Like Nadine said, we have, if we are in Arab country, yes, we teach them the Fusha or modern Arabic standards, whereas they are exposed in the street during their gathering and their social life with the dialect or the spoken language. So it becomes easier for them to really advance in the reading level, or at least understanding the Arabic. For our student Arabic learners in US, they have only 1 hour with us in the classroom to learn the language, and they have no other means to be exposed or hear it in any other form other than maybe reading the Quran if they happen to be Muslim, and which is a total different level of Arabic. Sorry, I took some time, but I wanted to share this. Thank you so much, NYATC, I mean, for this beautiful webinar. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Shukran, Lina, and thank you for your comments and for sharing also these resources with us. And if you don't mind sharing that link in the chat, because some people are asking about it, just to be mindful of everyone's time. I know we have more questions, but just to be mindful of the time. If you all have Nadine's email, which was shared with you when we sent the Zoom link, and Nadine also shared other ways of connecting with her, her Instagram account and other social media, if you are also on social media. So if you have additional questions, please do not hesitate to connect with Nadine. I know she will be more than happy to engage with you in a conversation, to answer questions and to share resources. And as we mentioned, Nadine will be sharing all the resources that she spoke about today with us, and we will be sending them in an email with the certificate of attendance from today. In order to get this email, please make sure that you have filled out this survey that Liz has shared with you in the chat. So if you can take a couple of minutes now, we promise it's no longer than 5 minutes, to fill out this survey so that we can get your feedback. And stay tuned for more webinars and for our upcoming Summer Arabic Institute for the 2nd year that we are going to be sending emails out very soon about that. And with that, we would like to thank you all for taking the time for being with us this morning. Thank you, Nadine, again, for an amazing conversation, very timely conversation about the importance of reading, but also representations in storybooks, that it is very timely now. And again, we wish you all a happy and blessed Ramadan, and have a wonderful weekend.